Welcome to our first video of the Project Horse series. This has been quite an undertaking to say the least, and Jake and I are thrilled to finally be able to put this video out. Our goal with this project is to find horses that everyone can relate to and document our process of training. There are a lot of different training programs out there and tons of opinions on how to get the job done. What we're documenting is Jake and I's approach to the various horses we get in for training, how we like to handle the various problems you might encounter, as well as the different approaches we take depending on the horse in question. Like I mentioned earlier, the horse industry is full of opinions on how to get the job done, as I'm sure you well know. Our goal is to show you the style Jake and I have put together after going and learning from some of the best horsemen out there today, and offer an inside look at the building of our training business. By showing you this process, hopefully you might pick up a few ideas or techniques that you might find valuable to apply for you and your own horses, and that, for Jake and I, would make this project a success. If even one person found value in this video, and perhaps came across a new theory they hadn't considered, this is exactly what this project is designed for. Our goal is to produce training content that is easily accessible, readily available to the public, and, here's the common pitfall of this sort of material, without sacrificing the quality of the actual training advice given. That is at the forefront for Jake and I. To pay forward the knowledge and experience that was given to us, it is important that we focus on giving you guys solid advice, discussing the theories that we personally believe in. No wishy-washy vague answers. This is the way we see it personally, and if there's just one bit of advice that you find value in, then this project has been a success in our eyes. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. We'd love to get your feedback on the video, as well as any questions and ideas of exercises or problems that you've never found clear answers to that perhaps we can shine a new light on. Thanks again, and enjoy. All right, let's go ahead and get started here with the actual training. So first, a little introduction on the mare here. This is Tangle. She's a 5-year-old quarter horse mare. She's had probably about 3 years of riding prior. So she obviously has some buttons and has been around the block a few times and whatnot, but she's going to be a great one for this series. One reason I'm really excited to bring her out is because she has a unique set of issues and problems that she brings to the table that we're able to showcase. This mare has had riding technically, but it was all riding that was focused on doing an event. No, she never really had anyone put the time into just getting her broke first, and that has obviously come back to bite her in the ass in a way now because of no foundation. Like, there's not, it would be nice if it was a cracked cement foundation that was holding this house up, but it's really just an uneven dirt patch. So I have to go back and, from not even patching up cement, I have to go back even another step and just smooth out the dirt and get that level first, and then pour the cement. So yes, she had riding, but that's a point I can't stress enough. There's a difference between riding the horse and training the horse. Rather than going in there and stepping away from the focus on the long-term goal for the first 6-8 weeks and just getting him broke, it was kind of get on it and, okay, this is what this horse is supposed to do, so let's start working on that. And because of that, there's so many holes that were just patched up and covered up that now are coming out. And you'll notice that this mare, she moves her tail a lot. She'll pin her ears when we lope her off. She's got an overall pretty sorry attitude. And a lot of that is definitely due to the kind of, real concentrated drilling type training she had previously. And some of that too is just kind of her attitude. She's not exactly the A-type personality horse. So some of it really is just the way that she's wired. But that's something that we want to showcase in this video, because it's not really pretty, but it's reality. And she's a unique set of circumstances, because not only am I going to have to go back and fix this foundation, but I have to step back even another step and just retrain her thought patterns. And so I think that'll be quite a neat thing to showcase. So what's been going on there in the background while I've been talking there is me just starting out the ride, just at a standstill there, softening that head and neck. Right now, that's not something so much with her that I'm worried about getting her soft. It's more so about just setting the tone of the ride. So when I get on, We're not immediately going somewhere. I'm not putting her to work. Just starting it off nice and slow. And you notice I was real slow with my hands about taking a hold of her and letting her go. Because I'm trying to, like I said earlier, retrain her mental patterns and reactions to pressure. And once I can get that done, then I can go back and actually start, fixing that foundation, get the body control, suppleness, all that stuff that we all love, and the nice soft feel in our hands, the cool look going around, all of that cool stuff I can start actually working on. But right now it's just a game of retrain her reaction patterns to pressure, basically, is what it comes down to. So all of that is there at the beginning of the ride is trying to set the tone to make it positive and, just reinforce to her in just small ways. Yes, that's not a whole lot of pressure there taking her head left and right, but it's just going to be a high number of repetitions with, low pressure to start with, and then I'll slowly be able to build as she gets better, adding more and more pressure. But it's really just a repetitions game. So anything I can do that is a pull and basically put her in a bind in some way and get her to handle that pressure in a positive way, that's just another, couple cents in the bank. And I'm just slowly stockpiling that over time with repetition. So I'm not really trying to get her head and neck soft right now. Really, my ultimate goal is to get her to have a little confidence in my hands. So I almost want to feel her push against it a little bit. That would be almost ideal right now. I'm almost trying to get this mare to get a little dull and a little heavy and have some confidence kind of pushing against me. Then I can come back and show her where she needs to be. So then I went and walked her around and softened up her rib cage there at the walk. And again, she doesn't feel good. Her body position is way out of whack. She walks the circle. She's got her rib cage really straight, her hip to the inside. She bends her neck around, but she doesn't really follow and arc her body around my leg. And I don't really like that. But right now, when I take a hold of her and I use that inside leg, she feels that and she immediately braces against it and almost wants to push against my leg. So right now, honestly, when I'm bent and when I'm softening that rib cage around there at the walk, the last thing I'm worried about is getting that rib cage off my leg, getting her to arc around my leg. What I'm really doing is I'm just waiting there. I'm just holding the rein and I'm just holding my leg there and just touching her with that spur and just basically nagging her with it. I'm not digging in that spur, but I'm almost kind of squeezing with that calf, and then just the spur is just there. And I'm waiting for her to go through that little mental fit of, I'm going to push my body against you and resist. Wait for her to go through that. She realizes nothing happened on my end. I didn't take the bait. And then wait for her to almost kind of relax and get off it a little bit on her own, and then turn her loose. So yes, I'm working on getting her to get into that correct body position, but right now I'm just trying to do it where she finds it or some semblance of it on her own. She's not going to find the perfect shape and softness on her own. It's even a really, really great horse would have trouble doing that. And she's definitely not that A-type personality. But what I'm hoping to do is when I take a hold of her and soften that rib cage just at the walk, that she doesn't overreact and get bracy and get worried and anticipate some sort of a meltdown or a battle. So really, the softness and body control is the least of my worries. And what you've seen here just at the jog now is almost literally the same concept. And I'm going to transition this concept over to the lope. So now as we move into the loping exercise, I want to backtrack just a tad bit just to cover what we did there at the jog, but it's essentially about the same. But before I get into that, I'll go into kind of this lead departure there. You notice how just crabby her attitude was about that lead departure? And it's hard to see it on the video, but under saddle, as soon as I pressed with my leg, she looked back at my leg, pinned her ears. She was twitching her skin like that what they do when there's a fly on their back and they try and twitch their skin to remove the fly. She was doing that. She was trying to dump her shoulder to the inside of that lead departure. I'm not worried about the finer points of the lead departure. I just wanted to lope off with a halfway decent attitude. So, the last thing I care about is trying to set her up perfect for a lead departure, because she's had a lot of that, being knocked in place and set up for a lead departure. I just wanted to lope off with a average attitude. She doesn't, I don't want anything spectacular, but she also doesn't need to, go out of her way to be a pig about it. So going back to the jog, and what I was doing there is almost essentially the same thing as I'm doing here at the lope. A lot of just guiding her around, trying to get her freed up, and steering her there and taking a hold of her. You notice I did a lot of taking hold of her there at the jog, but my main focus right now is just slightly tipping her nose to the inside. I don't want her bent around all the way to my toe. I want to let that bend go a little bit, and I want to just focus on getting her to have confidence in me taking a hold of her. Now, you notice I'm picking up on her face, and I did it at the jog too, but I'm not softening her face up. What I'm doing is I'm taking a hold of her, and through repetition, I'm trying to prove to her that I can take a hold of you and there's not going to be a fight. You don't need to worry about it. So I'm holding it there, but all I'm doing is I'm waiting for her to push against it and have some confidence. Then I give it back to her. I almost want her to get stiff. I'm almost teaching her to be stiff on my hands in a way rather than get soft. That's the goal right now. Because again, before I can actually start training on maneuvers and supple the body and that sort of thing, I need to reprogram her mindset. When I do steer her here, when I take a hold of her and pick up right here, what I'm doing with my legs, and I did the same at the jog as well, is I'm squeezing with my calves and I'm just touching her there with my spurs. I'm not rolling my spurs, I'm not kicking her, they're just there. And what that's going to do is every time I take a hold of her, first her reaction in the face is she gets really fractious. She throws her head up, a little bit immediately and then comes back to me. And with her body, she gets real bracy and tight, and she almost starts pushing against my legs to try and squirm out of it and avoid pressure. So I just have my legs there and the reins picked up, and I just wait for her to basically ignore it. I'm trying to be like a grade 1 class A nag. I'm just nagging this horse until she just lets me take a hold of her and just handle her without a negative reaction, or as little negative reaction as possible. She's still going to move her tail a lot, but by all means, she can learn to not resist, push her body against my legs, pin her ears, twitch her skin. All those negative reactions those are more of a temper tantrum than they are a permanent long-term habit, I would say. With this particular mare, there's some horses out there that they get to a point where they've been pinning their ears for years and you can never address that. But this particular mare, I don't think is at that level. She doesn't have the most go-getter personality, yes, but there's a lot of room for improvement for sure. You notice that one time there where I did take a hold of her, I was loping around and then I picked up on her and turned her to the right, I believe. And notice that she was super fast. She darted to the right and she slammed on the brakes. Everything fell on her front end. She just jammed it into the ground and then darted off to the right. And so I just had to take a hold of her. No, come here, and just show her where she needed to be. All that, her darting fast like that, is just her kind of having that little mental temper tantrum and expecting some sort of a fight. So I like taking a hold of her like this from the lope down in a transition to a slower gait, because it allows me, first of all, to kind of catch her by surprise, mix it up, keep things fresh, but also I can kind of pull her down into that jog, and that allows me to put a little more pressure on her face, but at the same time, because again, that pressure on her face, when I up that pressure, it's going to overload her brain box, and she's going to have most likely anyways, a negative reaction to that. But I can slow her down to the jog, which a slower gait forces her mind to slow down in a way. So it allows me to introduce a little bit more pressure in a more controlled environment. Yes, this horse has to lope eventually in the show pen and, be able to have a young girl. I think she's going to be 11 or 12, something like that. So she's not going to have that developed feel. So she's going to pull too hard one way or the other, pull back too hard. So she's got to be able to take that, yes. But let's set her up for success leading up to that. I know there's many schools of thought on that, and it really comes down to personal preference. But me personally, what Jake and I really like to see is set the horse up for that in a more controlled environment first, going from the jog to the lope and then a transition to the jog, and then eventually you set the building blocks that you can go then into the lope. And they're not going to just do it perfectly once you go into the lope. That's, it's not some sort of a fairy, fix all type of a solution, but it sets the horse up so that when you do go to the lope and they're out of their comfort zone, they don't know what to do, when you go back, when you do pressure them there and they get a bit lost, they have something to fall back on. So I think using the jog is a tremendous asset, especially for a horse like this. Now, a lot of the things I'm talking about here may not transition to your horse personally, but this is a unique situation, and this is a very real situation that Jake and I have come across in several occasions. And so we thought, because she brings such a unique set of circumstances and problems, baggage, you might say, to the table, I think this is going to be a great horse to use for this series. Because what I'm trying to do right now, I love body control, I love getting him soft and supple, but I can't do that with this horse right now. What I have to do, I have to go like even an extra step backwards and work on retraining her mental reactions to pressures and situations that she feels pressured. It's like a superstar athlete, maybe. That might be the best way to equate this. Where, yes, you have to go in the weight room, you have to run, and you have to stretch, and you have to work on your motor skills and your flexibility, whatever. You have to work on all those parts that, if you're a football player or a baseball player, whatever, you have to work on that specific discipline, yes. But no coach or personal trainer in the world is going to make a world-class athlete out of someone that has a losing mindset, a doesn't want to try, or a quitting mindset. And that's kind of what, to equate it into human terms. She's got what you might call a losing mindset. She doesn't want to try. She doesn't like being here. She doesn't want to be here. She wants to be anywhere but here. She feels pressure. Her natural reaction is to try and escape it. And so it's my job, before I can even work on the actual tactical stuff, the working on suppling her body, getting that sort of control, I have to go a step further and first retrain her to have more of a, now notice I say more of a winning mindset. She's not going to have that, type A type personality. She just isn't wired that way. But I have to first retrain her mindset. Then I can go back and fix all the other issues she has in her body. And with this horse, I really think that all comes back to when she was started. She was when her initial training she had, those several years, was all focused on the end goal, which was, okay, this thing has to lope along the rail, slow, head down, and this horse has to lope through a horsemanship pattern, slow, controlled. And so everything was evolved around that. And there was no emphasis put into getting the horse broke first. And the reasoning is because taking 6 weeks, 2 months to focus on teaching the horse the rules, teaching the horse drawing the lines and say, okay, you need to stay between these lines. This is how the world works. This is how you get along. Teaching them that at a young age when they're looking for you to give them the rules, that takes away from the end goal. That doesn't, loping along and out in the pasture and circling trees and softening the rib cage and just taking a hold of them, doing transitions, stuff like that, disengaging that hindquarters. That doesn't look like anything you would use in the show pen, so none of that was done with this particular horse. But you can see now all the holes that have opened up and the problems that have created because of that. Because when she was young, rather than learning, okay, when you're in a bind, you have to think your way through that situation. When you feel pressure, when I pull, you give. Instead of learning that and saying, okay, so this is how the world works. Okay, I get it. I can accept that, and that's just the way it is. Rather than that, she learned, okay, when I feel pressure, I need to panic because it's about to be a throwdown fight, and then we'll fight through it, I'll lose, and we'll move on. And honestly, that's just how she assumes the world works. And so a lot of the things that she does to me, especially in that lead departure, that was a little bit better there. Notice still how bracy she is with that front end. I just need her to just allow me to take a hold of her and have confidence. That's why I pick up on her there and hold her, because I'm waiting for her to have confidence to kind of lean against the bit a little bit. I just want her to have confidence with me taking a hold of her in different ways, and then loping her off. See how I shake the reins at her there? I want her to feel that pressure and just ignore it. But going back again to what I was saying, rather than teaching the horse to have confidence in a situation, she has just learned and assumes the world works, that everything is a fight and a throwdown, because she's never learned any other way. So everything that she does, not everything, but a lot of reactions that she has is just her trying to provoke a reaction out of me, because I'm not buying into what the game that she's used to, which is constant fights here and there. So a lot of the things that she'll do, and she'll do it later on here in the video as well, is she tries to find ways to push me to give her the fight that she's expecting, because that's what she's comfortable with. I know that sounds back-asswards, but that's so true for this particular horse. And so hopefully we can kind of showcase that, how we step around that a little bit and, you know, teach her these new habits. And I think a big tell of that is at the end of the rides, she doesn't ever finish off that hot and sweaty and tired, because there's only so much we can do in this tight arena. But mentally, at the end of those rides, I mean, she's like mentally exhausted. She just stands there and just falls right to sleep, because there's so much going on in her head that she's trying to process, because this is a totally foreign concept to her, and she's kind of confused, because everything that she has thought is, you know, the way the world works, now is all of a sudden not the way the world works. And so she can't make that connect right now. So I think this will be a very interesting horse to document going forward. Now there, when I took a hold of her, it was a little bit better. It was definitely positive improvement. So I just let her walk there. Let her see that when she does well, there's an out for her. So we'll take a brief look here into the turnaround, and I wanted to start off with disengaging her hind end and turning. Two reasons. One, because I think it's probably for a young horse, and when you're teaching the turn, for all the different ways that we've gotten to see it, I really think that this is one of probably the easiest ways to set a colt up for success in that turnaround. You're essentially kind of pressuring them and disengaging that hip, and then you're making it easy to just turn them loose and let them turn. So you're almost showing them that the release of pressure, the easy place to be, the good place to be, is in that turn. And it kind of teaches a young horse to hunt for that turn, because they're begging you to let them out of that disengage and turn them loose in that actual turnaround. And it seems like, too, for whatever reason, the more you move that hip, the more they keep it still here in the very early stages of that turnaround. But with her, you can see that there's very little body control there. See how inconsistent that hip is? She stops and she moves really fast like that, and then really slow. She steps behind there and forward. It's all over the place. But this mare, as you can see, has some idea of how to turn. So it's not a foreign concept to her, but I wanted to showcase this to kind of see where she's at, show that she has an idea of how to turn, and also I want to use this to segue into actually working on the turnaround with this mare, because I think the turnaround is going to be an incredibly valuable piece to use with her, because I'm going to be able to do something new and different, because again, we're in a smaller arena. There's only so much you can work on. So this is a kind of a new exercise to show her and go about it in a different way than what she's used to, which is this right here. Go about it in a different way, and hopefully that will create new mental patterns and kind of give her something to toy with. And my main focus for using the turnaround with this mare is to use it to teach her to be responsible for herself and think for herself, rather than just sit there with, you know, glossy eyes, glazed over look on her face, and wait for me to pull her around and put her in every position with a fight. She needs to start taking responsibility for herself, and I think the turnaround is going to be a great place to teach that to her. So let's get into the actual turnaround itself now. The kind of the way we're going to change it. If you notice her stepping around in that last video, you notice how bent around she was and how much her rib cage hung to the outside. Not only that, but everything was really sloppy. She was stepping all over the place. She had no real control of herself, and she's just totally relying on me to just hold her in place. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to try and work on straightening up her body and putting her in a position to turn with the most efficiency. But at the same time, as you can see me here shaking the reins and kind of bumping her with my legs, I'm working at the same time on the exact thing that I was doing at the jog and the lope, which is I'm taking hold of her, I'm kind of wrapping my legs around her, and I'm waiting for her to find at least a relaxed and somewhat correct body position on her own. I can't right now really force her and get after her to put her in position. I can't shape her very much and move her off my outside leg. I have to just wait for her to find that almost on her own in a way. Now this is not every horse. This is for certainly not every horse. Most general rule, you can practice moving them off your outside leg outside the turn like that. But her, I have to literally just kind of hug my legs there and wait for her to kind of find it. But what I'm doing now is I'm working on the start of my turn and really just working on the mental side of it. Now, normally I wouldn't do this early because, as you saw earlier, her idea of the turn is pretty poor. It is an idea of a turn, but not a great one. And so what I'm doing here is I'm just, with my reins on her neck, I'm just using my outside leg, and I'm just daring her to make a decision. And of course, she just has this glazed look on her face and just, walks right out of it. So every time she does that, I just pick her up, back her up a couple steps, and start again. Watch the way she steps. Look at that inside front foot. See how forward she steps? Like, she won't step back and around. She doesn't push herself back to me in the turn. All her weight is on her front end there. Like, she looks like one of those guys at the circus that walk around on their hands all day. That's about what it is. I'm surprised that her back end is still even on the ground at this point. All that weight is on her front end because she takes no responsibility for herself. So I'm just trying to set her up and start, planting the seed. I'm not going to get it across today, but start planting the seed that, hey, you need to take responsibility for your own feet. See how, like when I walked her off there and then I cued her into the turn, I made her walk there because I knew the moment I let her walk, she would immediately, the lights would just flick off. She's like, oh, we're going over here. And she's just completely audible to not paying attention. And so as soon as I asked her to turn, it completely caught her by surprise. And this is very mentally frustrating for her because she's not used to taking responsibility. She's used to the rider just kind of manhandling them and just forcing them into whatever position they need to be in. So she's not very comfortable with this where she has to take responsibility herself. So again, I'm picking up here and I'm just kind of wrapping my legs around her and I'm waiting for her to stop reacting and having her little temper tantrum and just find the place she's supposed to be in herself. Stop pushing against me. You can see her really struggling to push against my outside leg there with that rib cage. Then finally, she broke it loose and relaxed a little bit. So I'm trying to get her to hang on my hands some. I don't like that her head is down there in her position of denial, but that's another problem for another day. That will slowly iron itself out with repetition. That's not something I'm going to fix and address today by any means. So I just hold there and wait, and there, as soon as she relaxed, turn her loose. Shake those reins at her. Anything I can do to try and get her numbed up to that pressure is what I'm looking for. As far as her tail moving and stuff like that, I don't like it, but that's not something that I can work on. See how I didn't help her with the rein at all? I just used my outside leg, and she just walked forward. Now there was a perfect reaction right there. That's exactly what I alluded to earlier in the video about her looking for ways to provoke me. I think rewind this and watch her reaction again there when I take her into the turn. So if you're just joining us again from rewinding that clip, you saw how she kind of stomped her foot at my leg. And that was really her this whole time. She's very confused and frustrated because she's not winning the game. I'm not taking the bait and getting in her face and pulling her into the turn. Come here, you, and making her spin. All the responsibilities on her, which is way out of her comfort zone. It's not even that high amount of pressure, as you can see. but it took her way out of her comfort zone. So I think that's a good lesson. You don't have to go 1,000 miles an hour to take a horse out of their comfort zone. Doing little stuff like this can absolutely do that. So she was getting frustrated with that. She wasn't figuring out the win. And that little stomp there was like an attempt to get some sort of a reaction out of me, get me to take over and lose my patience and make her do it. To which, in her, as weird as it sounds, doing that really is what she's most comfortable with, because that's all she knows. So again, I just back her up a couple steps, let her back into the turn. You can see, notice her rib cage, see how bent to the outside of that turn it is. I'm helping her nose a little bit so she looks in just a little, but I would like to see that body a lot straighter, but right now that's not my main concern. My main concern has to be teaching her to take mental responsibility with that turn. But you can really see it in just as she steps around, seeing how she steps out front and to the side with that inside front foot, and all her weight is shifted to her front end. So and we covered this in a podcast episode, she's just begging to leave that turn. Technically, she's not leaving it, but all her body language is just begging to leave that turn. Notice watch her front foot step right there. Did you see that? That was a big change overall in that mare. Compare, and if you have to, go back to the beginning steps, the beginning stages of that turnaround, and watch her inside front foot compared to that last one. And you can see her almost pushing herself back and around in that turn. So we had a big mental breakthrough right there. And so that's when it's time to stop that exercise and move on. So we come back now to Tangle's cool down. And with this mare in particular, I like to finish off her ride just like I did my warm-up. That's really what it comes down to. Because everything that I do to her in the ride, the loping, the turning, all of that, stresses her out mentally. And so by the end of my loping, she's on like this mental high where everything is like, running 100 miles an hour. And so now I need to come back and find a way to chill all that out. I don't want to put her away in the stall when her RPMs are revving to the max. I need to bring it back down, let her mentally wind down and cool down, and put her away when she's back on just a emotional low again. Not so much an emotional low. I don't want to make it sound like she's depressed. An emotional calm. That would be what the wording that I'm looking for. I need her just to be calm and relaxed at the end of the ride. If I just lope her around and she got better and I let her walk there and then I worked a little on the turnaround, if I just quit there, everything is still going kind of fast. And so then the next day when I get her out again, she's going to almost pick up right where we left off the day before, and her mind is going to be thinking fast. And so the next ride that I have, I'm going to have to be dealing with some of that. And the next ride, I'm going to have to try and slow it back down and then bring it back up again with my loping and whatnot. So I like to finish off, especially with her, because I'm trying to change her whole attitude about the whole process of just someone riding her. So I like to finish it off just nice and relaxed and chill. Shaking the reins at her a lot of steering, just taking a hold of her and just, I would call this not so much a cool down as a nagging session is all it really is. I can't, stress this point enough. I would love to do body control, work on that rib cage, that hip, get all that stuff broke loose, the shoulder, but I can't right now. My main priority right now is to retrain good, positive mental habits. Once we've got, like I mentioned earlier, the athlete in his mind, once we've got her back to a winning mindset, let's do this type of a mindset, then I can go and work on all the body control and fill all those holes. But with her, it's like an extra step back. A lot of horses we get in for training, we have to start them back from the beginning and move them on through. But with her, there's like an extra step back to even get to the point where we can start, filling in holes that are in her actual foundation. There's like a physical foundation with her and then a mental foundation. Mental foundation takes precedence. Once those holes are filled in, then we can actually go back and fill in that mental foundation. And I like to just do a lot of, it's really low key. The jog is such a great exercise because, again, it's a slower gait and it forces them to slow down mentally. And so it feels like they learn and retain information just so much quicker. It is just a phenomenal gait to use for something like this. I can't stress enough just how important the trot is as a teaching gait. Using it in my loping around, bring her down to a jog transition. It's like the lope is go, 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 go. The mind is going really fast, really fast, really fast, then slow down. And I show that mind, show her that she can just slow back down and think. And it basically, by going back and forth from lope to jog, it's going to slowly increase her little bubble of pressure that she is willing to accept. There. And now I finished it off there at the walk. I took a hold of her. She was real nice, real relaxed. And so why not let her walk there? Show her that she did well. All right, so now we go ahead and start in with Luther here. He is a 3-year-old quarter horse gelding. He's had probably about a year or so of previous riding. And he's going to be a good one for this video because you kind of get to see the good and the bad of two opposite extremes. You get to see, on the one end of the scale, Tangle and all her baggage, and then on the other end of the scale, Luther here, who's overall a pretty well-rounded horse overall. He's got a good mind about him. He's got a fairly decent amount of try, and so I think he'll be a good horse to showcase here moving forward. So I started off the ride there with Luther, just softening that head and neck at the standstill, and now we move into softening that rib cage forward and around. Now, this horse in particular is really broke loose in the head and neck, which is why I didn't spend too much time there at the standstill. I want to start getting him going forward and around and moving somewhere. So I want you to watch this horse's feet especially and his body as we step around here. He's got a really good foundation overall, and so it makes this process so much easier than a horse like Tangle. But he's really soft about bringing that head and neck around, and he's almost a little bit too much. He kind of is always expecting to be brought around, and so every time I turn him loose, he's either leaving his head there or swinging it the other side, just as an honest mistake. There's nothing malicious about it in his mind, but I need to slow that down. But at the same time, I need to teach him how to move his body and supple that around my leg. Especially here at the walk, you'll be able to see when I take a hold of him, he's very inconsistent with his steps. He steps kind of quickly and then kind of slow, and he's just kind of all over the place. And you can see in his body how much his neck is bent, but look at how straight he is through his body. He needs to move that shoulder more to the inside. See how far there, when he came around the camera, how far his shoulder was hanging out to the outside, and his hip is more to the inside? I have to get that all broke loose and show him how to move off my leg. So take a hold of him here. You can see, when I went to slide my hand down the rein, he was kind of like, are we going left, right? He was a bit over anticipatory there, and then he came around. I need to slow that part down, but I need to get him a more supple from the shoulders on back. He's plenty broke loose in the head and neck area, but not so much the shoulders on back. As you can see, as I'm stepping him around here, he's not quite suppling that rib cage around my leg. Watch his hind feet as he walks around. I need that inside hind foot to step up and underneath of him. He more steps like forward, like he's just walking like normal. I need that inside hind foot to cross over that outside there. That was a good shot there on the camera. You could see that. That time he really engaged himself and got off that leg. And it's good with him. It's just repetition. Watch him step here. See how he just barely got that inside front foot up underneath of himself. There, that was a little better. That was a little better there. That's what I'm looking for. I need him to learn how to maneuver himself off my leg. So it's a bit different territory for him. Notice there how he kind of sped up and then he slows back down. All those inconsistencies, that's just part of the learning process, because I'm introducing or adjusting the rules to the game that he thought that he was aware of, or the game that he thought he knew. And so, again, when I change the rules and adjust the exercise, he's going to struggle with it a little bit. So that's a good thing to showcase here, is that, him, even though technically he's done this exercise quite a bit, now that I've adjusted it or tweaked it a little bit, he's going to have a little bit of struggles with it, because it's kind of a new concept in his mind. There, that was a little bit better. I'm looking for that inside foot to step underneath of himself. See that right there? Just it's getting a little bit better, but it has a ways to go for sure. So now we go to the jog, and with him in our warm-up, I do it a little bit differently than I do with Tangle. I'm looking to take a lot less bend in him, so I still, at this point in time, am just jogging him around and steering him around. Yes, I need some more body control. I would love to isolate the rib cage and the hindquarters a little bit more and the shoulders, but at this point in time, I need to try and almost let him straighten up. I need to almost numb up that head and neck. It's a little too loose, broke loose and wiggly, and so I need to kind of isolate that and just show him that he can just hang it out there and be relaxed. He doesn't need to be throwing it around quite so much. But at the same time, I need to teach him how to move and use himself underneath of me. So, especially here, because he's so used to always going around to my toe all the time, he's like a bit lost right now because I'm only tipping his nose to the inside. And so, as he's jogging around, if you imagine that there's paint dripping out of his nostrils as he's going around, and so he's like drawing a circle on the ground as he goes. He hangs his shoulder to the outside of the circle. His rib cage is like this weird, like 45-degree diagonal tracking around the circle, and then his hindquarters is to the inside of the circle. So he's kind of all over the place. So I need to, like right there, when I took a hold of him, he was trying to finish the bend and go all the way around to my toe. But so I had to stop him there. And again, I'm just holding those reins there, and I'm waiting for him to have a little bit of confidence in my hands. I am almost wanting him to hang a little bit on the bridle. I don't want him to, pull it and take it away from me, but I'm trying to show him, hey, you don't need to overreact there. But going back to that circle on the ground, I need his whole body right now to stay on that arc of the circle. And right now he's kind of got it, all over the place. He wants to bend his nose and head and neck to the inside of the circle, but leave his shoulders to the outside, his hip to the inside. It's all over the place. So in there, I shook the reins at him a little bit. I'm trying some of the same things with Tangle. I want him to just kind of ignore that pressure and not overreact to it so much. There, that was a little bit better. But now that I'm taking less bend, it's almost like a new exercise in his mind. Technically, he's done this. He's been, jogged around and suppled and taken to my toe, and I think that is all incredibly valuable. But now that I'm taking a little bit less bend, it's a bit of a foreign concept for him. So he has to figure out how to use himself in the most efficient manner. And that's something that, because this horse has such a good foundation already, it's not going to be that difficult. Like as a 2-year-old, this horse was shown kind of the rules and the lines for which he needs to stay between and how life works. And so because of that, all of this has been a much, much easier process overall. It's not going to be perfect. You can't start a colt and then set them up perfectly so you never run into resistance later on in their career. There's nothing you can do to set them up perfectly for every single thing. When you introduce something new, let's say it goes from softening the head and neck at a standstill, and then you do it at the walk. Well, there's only so much you can do to set them up for that, to soften their head and neck down and collect their body up at the walk. So when you do go to the walk, by nature of just that exercise, you push them out of their comfort zone. So there's only so much you can do to set it up, but you try to do as much as you can so you lay a good foundation that if the horse is confused or gets lost, they have something to fall back on. So now we're going to move into our loping exercises with Luther. And so right there, I just loped him off, and I'm turning him loose just to kind of see what he does. Just like we talked about at the jog, this horse at the lope, and to the right, he's much worse than he is to the left. But so I started off with the left just to begin the loping session on his better side, so it kind of builds his confidence, and I don't want him to think as soon as we go to lope off that there's going to be a bunch of training on him, trying to soften him up right away, whatever. We're going to play to his strong points first, and then go to the other lead and work on that. But what I'm trying to do, like at the jog, is when you imagine that paint line being drawn underneath his nose, when I take a hold of him here, I need that body to follow the arc of the circle. It needs to stay on the arc of the circle that he draws with his nose. And his tendency is to think overbend at the head and neck, because he's really broke loose there, but he kind of just lets the body just kind of trail along without putting much effort into how it should trail along. So my job is to take a hold of him and then use my legs to soften his rib cage and his shoulder up, and get him to stand upright from the shoulders on back and stay on the arc of that circle while rounding that rib cage around my inside leg. Remember with Tangle, I just pick up and I'm just squeezing my legs there and just waiting for her to ignore it. With him, I'm taking hold of his face, one, to try and just encourage him to lean on it and be more confident and not overbend so much. But two, I'm doing it because I need to take a hold of it so that I can maneuver his body with my legs. And I'm able to do this because this horse has a good foundation. I mean, he's had a lot of foundation type exercise. He's really broke loose. He's had a lot of suppling and softening and redirecting his feet, and he's had a lot of miles loping. So the process, because even though he is struggling with this, he's very broke loose from his head to his neck, but not so much from the shoulders back. I have to go back and fix that, yes, but the process is going to be so much easier because he does have a very solid foundation laid already. So right there, I just took a hold of him just to see what would happen, because we've been loping a lot to the left there. So I just took a hold of him to the outside just to see what he would do. And you see how he was kind of really just quick to just kind of fall on his front end, and he was real bracy up front when I took a hold of him and went the other way. And a lot of that with him is because he is an awful big horse, and so he's maybe not the most athletic horse in the world. He definitely has some talent, but a lot of it too is because he has had a lot of you might call it a rollback exercise or redirecting into the fence exercise, whatever you want to call it. He's had a lot of that loping circles, pull him into the fence, go the other way. And some of them get into a bit of a bad habit with that, where they just kind of plop down on their front end, turn and go the other way. So that's where I jogged circles there, softening that rib cage and that body back up. And again, I take hold of his face, but I'm not softening his face right now. That's the least of my worries. My worry is to hold his head and neck there and wait for him to have the confidence to push back into my hands while maneuvering his body. So I jogged those circles there to try and break everything loose, and then loped him off again. Once he was relaxed and loose, then I loped him off, because eventually I want to be able to take a hold of him like that. If he's on, let's say the right lead, and I take him to the left, that's a difficult redirection for a horse to do, and he needs to just melt down into that with confidence. So that was why, rather than just turn and lope off the other way, I jogged those circles first, then loped him off, because I'm trying to get those feet loosened up and that body loosened up. So this is the worst way. It's kind of difficult to see it here on camera so much as it is to feel it, but this way especially, he wants to lope with his rib cage like twisted. He likes to dump his shoulder to the inside all the time, and he wants to twist his rib cage like I guess the best way to describe it is those alligators that when they grab a hold of their prey, they do that little spin, the death roll, to try and like break the prey's neck or pull him over so they can drag it into the water. That's kind of what it feels like when I take hold of him, turn him to the inside. He just wants to roll over with that rib cage. So I'm just taking hold of his face so I can maneuver him with my legs. It's all, that's probably one of the biggest key points to collection overall, is it's in the legs, it's not in the face. I'm using the face so I can maneuver his body, but more importantly, I'm holding on to his face there because I'm trying to show him, hey, you don't need to always bend around to my toe. You don't need to be thinking left, right, left, right, left, right, let's go, let's bend, let's soften. You can just hang out right there and just enjoy life a little bit, rather than always having to give me 110%. Now, that's not a bad problem to have, believe me. I would much rather that than a horse that does the opposite and is like, no, I ain't giving you anything. So it's a much easier fix. You know, having this horse maybe super broke loose in the head and neck, but not so much in the body. But because he has such a good foundation laid already, and mentally he kind of knows, okay, when he pulls, I need to give. Okay, I don't know what he's asking me right here, but I do know that everything that I've been taught is I need to think my way out of the situation. So I'm going to try that. And because he's had that groundwork laid, that foundation laid, everything that we're doing here, maybe it's foreign concept, but he's going to progress a lot faster, and the learning curve is going to be a lot easier than it would, say, for Tangle. So there, back there, I had taken a hold of him there. Again, you could see how bracy he was with that front end, so I jogged some circles and got his body straightened up, because again, that braciness there, he just plops down on his front end and dumps that shoulder to the inside. So I jogged those circles, loosened everything back up. I picked up his rib cage and then I loped him off again. Again, I'm taking a hold of him there just because I'm trying to get him to relax into my hands. I'm not softening up is the least of my worries. He's kind of like Tangle in a way where I do want that head and neck to come up a little bit right now. There, that was a little bit better. That time when I just took a hold of him there, especially the opposite way that he was on the left lead, I took him to the right, and I liked the way that he came down there into that transition. It was much better. Now again, it wasn't next to the fence, and loping him, let's say, on the right lead and turning him into the fence, that's going to add another level of pressure where he might see that fence coming and assume, you know, that it's a rollback or change of direction and dump himself down on his front end. So, you know, we haven't completely gone back and exposed the problem the way it was originally, what you saw the last two times, because I turned him into the fence, but it was better, and that's why I let him walk. Yes, we're working on the lope. Yes, I'm loping around, steering him, softening, so why would I just let him walk there? Well, because it's a mental game. It's all about, when he gives me a try like that, why not let him walk? Why not, like, make a big deal of him winning the game? You know, it would be like if you're trying to teach your child to have manners and they open a door for somebody, for a stranger walking into a restaurant. You make a big deal of that. Wow, what a great job. You know, that's exactly what you do. You make a big deal, acknowledge when they did something right, something that was, you know, good. And that's exactly what that was there. I wanted to acknowledge when he tried for me, and, you know, you can see the wheels turning. And so it was a genuine try on his part. It was better overall. It was progress. There, I like that. That wasn't too bad. He got a little bit stuck there when I turned him in the fence, but you notice how he was a lot better about not just dumping himself on the ground. And that all translates back to letting him walk that last time. Though something clicked there when he just kind of melted down and I let him walk. He's like, huh, that's different. Let me try that again. And so it paid off there the next time I took him into the fence. And again, of course, I took him into the fence to the left. That time to the right, it wasn't quite as good. But if I can do a couple more, again, each side of the horse is different. So the left side, whatever I get there, is not going to translate really to what I get on the right side. So I'm not too surprised that I wasn't so good taking hold of him there that time into the fence. There, so that time I took a hold of him, and it was much better. And that's why I let him walk there again. I can't stress enough the importance of letting him walk like that. So now we go ahead and begin the turnaround, and just like with Tangle, I want to first disengage him, disengage the hind end, move that around, and then ask him to bring those shoulders through. So this horse obviously is a lot greener than Tangle. He's had this done to him a little bit, but as you can see, he is quite green about it. But with this particular horse, I wanted to put this on here to showcase, one, that he has some idea, but also see what he's doing and why I'm going to work on the turnaround, but not with this particular exercise. So, I mean, could he be a lot better with this? Yes. The answer is absolutely yes. Look at the way he's turning, but look at his body position as he's turning there. The biggest issue that I'm having with him in everything that I do, from the jog to the lope to here in the turn, is getting him to understand how to carry himself efficiently. he's a larger horse, so that already is, makes it a little bit more difficult for him anyways. But you just see how he's kind of falling all over himself there. His rib cage is way to the outside. He just does not know how to hold himself whatsoever. And so what I'm going to work on here next in the next clip is kind of the process I'm going to use to start introducing that turnaround, but in a different aspect, because he's just kind of stepping all over himself. He's really clumsy, and see that, the hip is what's moving there. He just has no idea how to move his rib cage off my leg and stay straight and balanced. So here we go into the actual turnaround and kind of what I want to adjust with him. And so the first thing I'm going to do is, outside this turn, I need to work on getting this shoulders and rib cage stepped up underneath of himself. So I'm going to be walking a circle forward and around, and I'm just taking hold of his face so I can maneuver his body. But again, I'm not worried about softening up his face. I'm just kind of holding it there just so that he'll allow me to maneuver his body with my legs. And I need to teach him to get that rib cage upright and underneath of himself. And so, because I need him to be more balanced in that turn. You saw when I yielded his hind end and brought the front end through how, all his weight was on his front end, and he was swapping ends really bad. His rib cage was bowed way to the outside. He wasn't moving the shoulder. He wasn't stepping hardly at all. So the first thing I need to do is start teaching him how to carry himself in this turn. And I'm going to do that the easiest way possible is to do it outside the turn. So you see he started off decent. Now he's getting a bit bound up and balled up and been out of shape. I'm tipping his nose a little bit to the inside to help step him around a little bit. I tapped his shoulder there with my outside leg to speed him up that last quarter of that turn, last half of that turn. He stepped a little bit better. Now I'm out of it, and where am I going? I'm going back to that forward and around. He needs to go forward and around. I'm going to do the hard part right now because he has no idea what I'm looking for right now. So I'm going to do the hard part outside of the turn, and then I'll put him back in the turn and see what my work outside of it did to affect the actual turn itself. Eventually I'll be able to actually train on him inside the turn, but he's not ready for that yet. It's a building process. How many new things, new rules can I show to him at one time that's not going to overload his boat? Right now it has to be everything outside the turn. It's like a disconnect. Straighten everything up outside the turn, then let him turn, see how he does, come back out here, fix it, put him back in the turn. Eventually I want to be able to take hold of him and fix it in the turn, but for right now that's the least of my worries. Get the hard stuff done here outside the turn, and then we'll worry about in the turn here a little bit later once he has a better idea. But see how I'm trying to get that outside front foot? When he's walking that circle forward and around, I'm not just letting him walk around. Just like earlier in the ride, when I was suppling that rib cage around at the walk, when I wanted that inside hind foot to step up underneath of himself and almost cross over, it's the same thing I'm looking for when I'm walking him forward and around. When I'm walking him around, I want that outside front foot to be stepping almost exaggerated over that inside front foot, just like a turnaround almost. So it's kind of like a mini turn outside the turn at the walk. So there I just turned him there to the left just to kind of see what I had. And now I'll go ahead outside the turn, and I'm going to work on straightening everything up. I have him slightly looking to the inside, because again, I don't want to create a habit of him looking to the outside of that turn, and that's a very real thing you need to look out for. When you start straightening a horse's body up like that, their natural tendency is to start trying to look to the outside. It's like he's overbent, so you try and straight, and then all of a sudden it flips it the other way, and now he's looking the wrong way. So you have to be consciously aware of that, and so I always have him looked in just a bit. And you see how I help him there with that inside rein? But you notice the reins, I'm not pulling him around in the turn. I'm letting him turn freely, and I'm just helping a little bit with that inside rein. I just have the outside rein just slightly laid against his neck there. That was a little bit better, but he's still real bound up and bent out of shape. So I walked him out of that turn, and now I'm straightening up that rib cage. But he needs to go forward and around. You see that, how he twisted his head there? He's kind of resisting against me. He doesn't want to move that rib cage off my leg. And all these problems that he's having in the turn, you can look at the way he lopes and jogs around. It's very much the same thing. He doesn't understand where to put his body when his head is straight like that, and so that is the real reason that he's struggling. If I can fix this body position here outside the turn, even in my loping and my jog, it's going to do wonders for him actually in the turn. There. So that wasn't too bad there to finish off with right there. Overall, some progress. So with Luther's cool down, I'm going to do something a little bit different than with Tangle. I'm still doing it at the jog. I absolutely love finishing off these cool downs at the jog. I think it does wonders for them. But rather than just jogging around and focusing on getting her to just handle and accept life in general, I'm going to actually work on more isolating and suppling his body from his shoulders on back in a controlled pace. So see his whole body there moving around. I'm trying to do like a reverse arc or a counter bend, whatever you want to call it. See how his whole body was just like in a sloppy side pass, just falling to the inside. Like everything was connected in one. All the hinges, his shoulder, rib cage, and his hindquarters are all like rusted together, and so they only move all at once. You can't move the individual pieces. So what I'm going to do to remedy this, because there's a difference between the horse doing the exercise and being mentally engaged and aware of their body and just going through the motions half asleep. And that's kind of what he's doing here. He's not really doing the exercise, he's just going through the motions. So I need to teach him how to isolate parts of his body when I ask him. So I'm picking up on that right rein, and I'm picking straight up on it because I'm trying to lift that shoulder up and over. And then I'm using my, let's go this way. So I'm picking up on the left rein now, and I'm picking that shoulder up. I'm using my left leg and I'm pressing behind the girth to ask that shoulder to move. But look at my right leg. I have it almost back towards his hindquarters there because I'm trying to engage that hip, block it from just falling to the inside. And I'm almost like yielding his hindquarters off my hip to the left while at the same time pushing his shoulders over to the right. And what that's doing is it's going to teach him over time how to isolate those parts of his body rather than just dump the whole thing all at once over in like a sloppy side pass. He needs to learn that he can isolate parts of his body. And this is all stuff like this. We're not working on the turn yet, technically, yes, but doing stuff like this, body awareness, I guess, is maybe the best thing that you could call it. Teaching him how to be coordinated and move efficiently. That's probably the key word. Teaching him to move efficiently will pay dividends in everything that we do. This is going to pay off in our lope. This is going to pay off in our turnarounds. This is going to pay off everywhere. Now, at the same time, when I'm taking hold of his face, again, I'm not worried about how he feels in my hands. I would rather him just kind of lean on them and just have confidence and be relaxed about me taking hold of him. But I'm definitely not worried about trying to make him, soft and supple and feather light right now. I'm worried about the body. How he'll feel in the face will be a byproduct of that, for sure. So now I'm going to go ahead and finish off the ride with a little bit of backing. And I do it with this horse because I wanted to show you the way he backs. Watch. Let's see, as soon as I round the corner, I believe you can really see it. Right there. So see how he's backing up there? He's like scrambling backwards. I'm just holding him there. I'm not even asking him I'm not using my legs to kick on him or nothing. See how he's backing up there? He's like scrambling backwards. And it doesn't look quite as bad on the film, but when you're on top of him, you're just kind of thrown all over the place because he's like just scrambling backwards. And if I'm going to teach this horse to be collected and allow me to train on him in the spin or, maybe even, start some stopping with him, something like that, I can't have him audible to scrambling. Everything has to be controlled. So what I'm doing is honestly, obviously if you want a nice backup, you need to quit when there's energy in the feet. Well, he's got a lot of energy in his feet, but it's not controlled energy. So I need to go back, and first thing I can do, if I want to get that controlled energy, is first thing I need to teach him is just to slow down and think about it. So honestly, right now, I'm releasing when he slows down and I feel cadence. All I care about right now is cadence and control. Once he understands that cadence and is nice and slow and relaxed, then I can add speed.